Okay, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Roll Mangging for our Call of Cthulhu campaign, Horror on the Orient Express. We are 6 sessions in, I think, I want to say. I have no idea. Maybe I could check. Maybe I could find out. I wonder if there's a way I could find out. Probably. I want to say it's 6. I desperately want to say that this was the 6th session we've had, which it always seems like we've done so much more. Yes. This was the 6th session. Crazy. I'm curious what people are thinking of this campaign, at least from a viewer standpoint, which I know you don't really get a great... You don't get a great grasp of the campaign. You basically have to piece together from my ramblings how the flow of the campaign actually is gone. But I guess here's the sum up so far. They started in London. They attended a banquet dinner where a friend of theirs, a mutual friend, was speaking and gave a speech about the paranormal and parapsychology and all that. Afterwards, they found out that he went missing. He later contacted them. They went to his little sleeping room in some shit part of town, where he told them that they must go on a quest across Europe to recover the pieces of an ancient artifact known as the Sedefkar Simulacrum, which is scattered all over the place, but it's also conveniently located along the route of the Orient Express. He gives them a bunch of money. They get tickets on the Orient Express, and they head first to Paris, in which, after a hilariously poor incident at the asylum, they become fugitives of the law. All sorts of shit happens, some people die, and eventually they go to the outskirts of Paris to a place called Poissy, where they talk with a couple of a doctor and his wife. They think they're probably vampires, but they're not sure. And through some searching, they find the first piece of the simulacrum, the left arm. They move on from France, and they head into Switzerland, specifically to Lausanne, where they go to the residence of a man who sent a letter to the doctor and his wife asking about the simulacrum and saying he was in possession of some scrolls. So they go to the guy's place, which happens to be a taxidermist. They immediately suspect him as evil, and his brother is evil, and everybody's evil, and so on and so forth. The guy introduces them to a man known as the Duke, who they also suspect is evil. They're ready to get into a bidding war with the other guy to purchase the scrolls, but they suspect foul play, so they camp out the guy's taxidermy shop, and the Duke visits, kills the guy, kills his brother, and they realize that they must go into the dreamlands of Lausanne to stop the Duke and to recover the scrolls. They do so, and after a lot of weird occurrences and a really shitty trial, they manage to rescue the dream version of the taxidermist, who gives them the real scrolls, but unfortunately he's dead, so they leave him behind, and now they have the scrolls. So that's where we're at. They have one piece of the simulacrum and the scrolls. They have not read the scrolls yet, nor have they made any inclination to do so. And I know I'm spoiling that from this session, but I assure you, they made no inclination to read the scrolls. Also, I have a headache again. And I think I realized what it's from. It's basically from me talking almost constantly since about 2 o'clock today. And it's about midnight right now. Like Sundays are the busiest day of my week right now, because, I go to brunch and then board game day, which, that's lots of yelling and laughing and all sorts of shit like that. Then I do hanging with Mang for a straight hour of pure talking. Then we go straight into Call of Cthulhu, and I DM, so there's constant talking there. And then I do this, and by this point, I'm pretty much done. I could probably save this for the next day, but I don't think I'd remember as much. So you'll just have to deal with it. Okay. So that's the sum up of the campaign so far. And as I said, I don't think it's as good as Masks, but Masks is it's the pinnacle, I think, of pre-written RPG campaigns. Like, you can't top it. It's too damn good. I do think it has a lot of exciting moments, but I think it also has some pitfalls. And I talk about those kind of in Secrets of Role-Playing. But anyways. So they have one piece, they have the scrolls, and they're heading now to Milan to potentially get another piece. Or so they think. So they woke up after going to Dream Lausanne. And the train is underway. It's moving. They're heading out of Switzerland into Italy. And the breakfast bell rings, and they're famished. So they all head to the dining car. They get seated, and they overhear a conversation from nearby. The waiter is asking a man if he will be dining alone. And the man responds that he will be dining with his friends. And it's the Duke's voice. And so he stands up, and there he is, the Duke, and he sits down with the group at the table. And he's got a little briefcase. And he says pretty much, I'll make this quick. I want the scroll, and you will give it to me, or I will destroy you. And that's it. And so here, this was a very interesting... Oh, I should mention, by the way, that for this session, we only had Dingleberry, William Barth, and Walter Umberly. We only had 3 players. I have no idea, like... Ren, I don't know where, I really thought he was going to be here. He gave no indication he was going to miss it. And Ali Shaw has been MIA for over a month now. Nobody has any idea where she went. It's kind of worrying. Apparently, she's actually alive, in real life, I'm saying. But that's about all we know. So anyways, the 3 players. So they began talking feverishly, out of character, I assume, about what to do in this situation. And the idea eventually became to distract him and put the poison in a drink that William Barth purchased in Paris ages ago. It actually wasn't ages ago. It was like 2 sessions ago or something, but, you know. Maybe 3. And so, yeah, their idea was, okay, Umberly's going to head off and say he's going to go get the scroll. No intention of getting the scroll. Dingleberry is, of course, the distraction, because he is always the distraction. And William Barth is going to go to the bar, get some shots, and then put the poison in one of the glasses. And so that's what he, like, he spends like a lot of money on 2 shots. Like, he wants the finest shit. And I'm like, okay, you get some scotch that's, you know, belonged to a king or something like that. So he gets these 2 shots of scotch. He puts the poison in one of the shots. He brings it back, and he's like, you know, we should toast to... Well, I didn't say toast. I don't know. He said some shit that, you know, we shouldn't part ways, and, you know, he's like, I may not like you, but I respect you. It's like, he's just completely bullshitting. And this guy knows it. This guy is not dumb. The Duke has a 90 intelligence. Like, he is not dumb at all. And so he says, I can't pass up a drink, but I realize, and I'm not stupid, that you have every reason to be my enemy. So how about we switch glasses? And I was like, this is gonna trip him up. What are they gonna do? I wanted to really challenge him here. What are they gonna do? This is a climactic kind of moment. This is why I kind of wanted this to happen last time at the end, but anyways. So William Barth switches glasses with him. He's like, oh, of course. And the poison, I should mention, the poison that the guy that he purchased, that he put in the shot, is not like an insta-death potion or poison. It's a paralytic. There's probably a far better technical term for that, but it's a paralytic poison. And so, you know, he drinks it, and like 30 seconds later or something like that, he just freezes up and he can't move. Again, I don't know what their their end game plan is. Like, they're going to paralyze him, and then they're going to throw him off the train, I guess? Like, he's a big guy. Like, it's not easy. But okay. I mean, you don't say any of that. You just, okay, roll with it. So he switches glasses. And he's like, oh, clink. And, like, the Duke goes to drink his. And William Barth puts the poison shot in his mouth. He, like, puts it in his mouth. And then he's like, okay, I want to, like, just rush over to his lips and just, like, spit the shot into his mouth. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it's just like, you expect him to then swallow the poison. And I'm like, all right, roll. You'll need like a hard dex or something like that, at least. And so I think he fails his dex roll. No, actually, he might have succeeded on the dex, but then he failed the luck roll to make, like, I was like, because there's really no reason he would swallow, but it's like, I'll give him a luck roll because it's ridiculous. And he failed that, so I was like, okay. So he just kind of like spits it all over you, and then he like backhands him. He backhands him for like 3 damage, and then combat started. And so Umberly has kind of been watching this at this whole time, and he actually grabbed his briefcase full of dynamite. That freaking briefcase, man. So combat ensues, and Umberly goes first. He charges forward with his rapier, and he stabs the Duke straight in the stomach. And I describe what it feels like as he stabs him as basically stabbing a large block of, like, a sponge block. And the Duke doesn't seem to really react at all. And so they're like, well, we're screwed. Dingleberry tries to grab a bottle from the bar and smash it over the Duke's head. He misses completely because he's Dingleberry. So then the Duke goes and he casts a spell at William Barth, causing his left arm to basically melt off, and William dies. And we had the first casualty of the campaign. God bless you, William Barth. You served your country well. And I was surprised. Because I have no idea what anybody's health is. I never keep track of that. I was just like, oh, 5 sounds good. I'll do 5 damage. And he only had 3 health left. It's like, oh, well, I can't take it back now, so you're dead. It had to happen sooner or later, and I'm glad it was kind of this climactic, oh shit moment, So, they just witnessed their friend and companion die horribly. And they don't really think they can harm this guy at all. Because this guy is just like, and boom, William's arm melted and he died. And I'll mention, for those that don't realize it or just kind of casually follow along, that William Barth's left arm melted off. And William Barth possessed the piece of the simulacrum pertaining to the left arm. Okay. I don't know if any of the players realize that, but there you have it. Okay. They basically both ran. They ran in like opposite directions. And so they were both out of sight of the Duke for a little while. Umberly came back with the dynamite, and he lit it. He lit the dynamite like a piece in the case, and then he pushed the case of dynamite over to the Duke. And the Duke at the time had like a length of rope in like a circle, and he was holding it above his head. And so Umberly pushes the case over to him. So the Duke looks down at this briefcase full of lit dynamite, and he just kind of grins at Umberly. And then he pulls the thing down on him. And he disappears. He's gone. And so Umberly's like, oh shit, Although I don't know what his plan was regardless. His plan was to basically, hopefully, blow up the Duke, and he goes with it. Like, sacrifice his life, and at least 75% of people on the train just to kill the Duke. That's not good. If that would have actually happened, if I would have for some reason allowed that to happen, and if he had just done it like in his room, like in private with nobody there, apart from serious GM metagaming intervention, there was nothing I really could have done. And that Orient Express would have just blown up, killed all those people, and my campaign would be... That would have basically ended the campaign. I probably would have ended the campaign if he had done that. And I probably would have made him feel guilty as fuck for doing so. Which is like, this is why you never give anybody dynamite. It's just, you're asking for trouble. And this is coming from a player who, more than anything, would love to play with dynamite in an RPG. So I'm giving advice to people like myself. And I didn't think Ziggy was like that, but look, here we are. So he sees that the Duke disappears, so he jumps over to the dynamite, and he's like, he tries to put it out. And so I give him like an easy roll to do it, and he doesn't. And I'm like, all right, fine. Because what's y'all like? Oh no, you didn't stop it. It blows up. Oh man, my campaign's ruined. Oh well. Like, I'm not, if he's trying to stop it, I'm gonna let him stop it. Okay. So they didn't get rid of the Duke at all. And basically my policy with the Orient Express and the people on it is basically they don't ask questions. They just don't. They can get away with all sorts of shit on the Orient Express, apart from like actually hurting people. And they don't ask questions. Because that's the Orient Express. That's the level of quality service that people expect. Okay. So we had then, we needed a new character for William Barth, Charlie Chalk, so on and so forth. And so he rolled his stats, and he wasn't happy with them, and he was just, I think he was just like, he was trying to make just like another one of his type of characters. His like kind of all same fast-talking, slick, which doesn't really describe William Barth. I thought William Barth was kind of the unique one, compared to Charlie Chalk and Richard Blackstone and kind of all that kind of character. He has a type of character he tends to play, I know. He's like, I don't want to do that. So he's like, are there any pre-made characters? Because in Masks of Nyarlathotep, I had the companion. Like, I had the companion PDF, which recently had a Kickstarter for like a full book of it. And if I thought I was going to run Masks in like the next 10 years or something like that, I would have backed it, because that's really cool. But the companion, for each like section of the campaign, so the New York section, the London, the Cairo, all that, for each one, it had a bunch of pre-made characters. And it had like, it had all the stats, all the skills, all that, and then it had like reasons for each one to join the campaign at that time, like join the group. It was really cool. Horror on the Orient Express doesn't really have any of that. Apparently, unless you buy the digital version of Horror on the Orient Express, then you get pre-made characters. Which normally wouldn't bother me ever, because I would never use a pre-made character. But finally, like that concept is brought up. Somebody's looking for a pre-made character, and I didn't really have anything for them. The physical book comes with, or the box set comes with the book 5 is Strangers on the Train. And the whole book, it's not a huge book, but the whole book is just NPC passengers on the train. And it gives all their stats, and it gives like some backstory for them. And it's well put together, but I guess that's kind of the same thing. It didn't seem like it gave all their skills. Like, it seemed like a very truncated list. But maybe that's, well, also some of the skills that they put for NPCs, like, some of the skills that they put for NPCs anywhere in any Call of Cthulhu shit is always kind of stupid. Like, Fat Mabel in Masks had like 95% skill in ignore Makunga's activities or something like that. You know, it's just kind of like lame, funny skills that they just throw in there. So it was kind of like that in that one. But he was asking about pre-made characters, and I was like, oh, I have this. Let me look through this. And so I started listing off some of the NPCs to give him kind of ideas or concepts or anything like that. And we got to a character named Biff Baxter, Hollywood film star. And so, I mean, as soon as I said the name Biff Baxter, like that was it. It was done. Like, this was his character, and that's it. Biff Baxter is a film star who's only acted in westerns. That's it. But he does his own stunts. And Biff Baxter and his trusty steed, Lightning, have lit up the silver screen all across America and is spreading into France and Romania. His stardom. And he's very strong, very large, I mean, like, tall, very attractive, and really dumb. He is a cowboy through and through, and he always carries a Colt 45 on his hip. And so, of course, it was so funny because he was like, he got so excited about this character, but then he was like, oh no, I don't want to play another, this is one of my type of characters, I don't want to do that. And so we're like, you know, we tried to give him some other ideas, and they're like, he's just like, who are we kidding? This is who I'm playing. I'm Biff Baxter. And so his picture that he used for Roll20 was just like one of those pictures that like a housewife will share on Facebook of just some model type guy in shirtless with jeans and a cowboy hat on, and the text on it says, you know, save a horse, ride a cowboy. Like, it was exactly one of those types of things. That is like, this is Biff Baxter. It's just like, I'm gonna picture this entire time Biff Baxter never wears a shirt. And so he played Biff Baxter basically as a cowboy, but also as a movie star. It was like this horrible amalgamation that I think is the funniest character I've ever encountered in any RPG ever of my experience. Oh man, there's just so many things, because he had like a list of like cowboy quotes and wisdom and sayings and stuff like that, and so he would just like throw those into his conversation. And he would also like make up his own shit. Like, he would make up his own stuff, and I think it was something from, but he, like, it was just, like, there was a one where, I don't know, he was rolling a spot hidden or something like that, and the answer that I gave him for his spot hidden wasn't satisfactory, so he was like, what did he say? He's like, boy, I can spot a black steer a mile away at midnight, and I can't see this. It was just, oh my gosh, it was so funny. Such a hilarious character. Like, I really wish I would have recorded some of his shit to play to you. But just picture a cowboy film star in the 20s that's really dumb. Like, he did all sorts of just dumb shit. But he was also the luckiest character. Like, his average roll for the whole session, he rolled many, many times. It was like a 20. He rolled so many times under 20. It was, and like, he rolled 100 like twice, and it was like for strength. It was, no, man. So funny. So funny. If you're looking for a Call of Cthulhu character, Biff Baxter, Hollywood film star, does his own stunts. And so every character he met, he'd basically be like Troy McClure. He'd be like, you may have seen me in such films as, and then he would like list off real Western films from the 20s. And he had like this huge list off. And let me tell you, apparently a gigantic amount of Westerns were made in the 1920s. Yeah, funny shit. So funny. That really made the session, I think. So yes, I liked William Barth, but Biff Baxter trumps all. Okay. So anyways, I was like, okay. The easiest way to bring this guy into the group is that you're on the Orient Express going across Europe, and you heard about this ruckus, and there's all sorts of strange rumors across the train about what happened in the dining car, and you want to find out more. And so he comes into the dining car after all that shit happened, and he's just like, boy, howdy, what happened in here? And so they don't even really, like, tell him anything about what, like, they're just going across Europe, and they're like, oh, we should go sightseeing with us. And he's like, oh, sure, you seem like nice folks. They don't really tell him anything about their whole quest or mission or anything like that. They just bring him along. It's just, like, good. We don't need any fuss, no muss, just have a guy, carry on with you. Okay. So they arrive in Milan, Jewel of Italy. I don't know if it's actually called that, but I called it that. I don't know what the Jewel of Italy actually is. Okay, so they arrive there, and they discover quite quickly that Milan is not all as it should be. It should be glamour and glitz, and right now it's drab, depressing. And so they're wondering what's up. But they go to their hotel at the Galleria, to the rooms that were reserved for them by Caterina Cavallaro. And these rooms are very, very nice, like top tier hotel rooms right there. And it's all booked for them. It's all taken care of. Like, that's a big deal. This is like, you met Paris Hilton. No, that's a terrible example. I don't know any. You met Cher. No, not, God, what am I trying? You met Celine Dion. I don't know. On a train or on an airplane, and you chatted up with her for a while, and she got you tickets to her sold out show and hotel rooms in Vegas, and this is not really a good example. It's like even bigger than that. I don't know. Miley Cyrus. Why am I still going? I don't know. Anyways. So they're enjoying their hotel room, but they realize that they want to try, they want to find where Caterina is and thank her and, hang out with her until their performance and stuff like that. So they go, they eat, they get lunch, and they get the paper. Oh, I forgot to mention, actually, Biff Baxter speaks fluent Italian. Out of game, that was because they knew they were about to go into Italy, and they were sick of not knowing any languages. So Biff, as a new character, is like, I know Italian. In character, his reasoning was that he was about to release a Italian Western film, and so he learned the language in preparation for it. And so, of course, as he went around Italy, as he went around Milan, he would tell all sorts of characters to check out his new movie, and I don't remember the name of it. He would say, oh, check out blah, 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 coming out in a few months. People just hated him. It was great. So yeah, he spoke and read fluent Italian, because of course, and that's what, so really, I want you to just picture Brad Pitt in Inglourious Bastards, where it's just like, buongiorno. It was so great. God damn it. So they read the paper, and they find out, alarmingly, that Caterina Cavallaro is missing. Nobody has seen her in over a day, which for, a huge star, that's a big deal. Especially since, the performance of her lifetime is tomorrow evening. She shouldn't be disappearing. So they're, of course, distressed about this, and they want to look into, what's going on. So they first go to the station, the train station, because the article mentions that she was last seen getting off the train. So they go down there, they talk to one of the porters, and they find out that when she got off the train, a black car was there, a very fancy, top-of-the-line, new model, Alfa Romeo car was there, and a man waved at her She approached him, talked to him, waved to her entourage, and then got in the car and drove away. Suspicious, yes. So they then went to... Where the hell did they go next? Maybe the police, maybe not. I really have to freaking look now. I think then they went to the actual opera house. They went to the opera house. And they talked their way in past the security guy. And they basically got lost as shit in the backstages. Like, they got real lost. Until the security guy eventually found them and directed them towards the music director's office. And they were fortunate that the security guard was a fan of Biff Baxter's work. So... And Biff Baxter said, because first Dingleberry was like by himself trying to talk his way in, and that's never a good situation. So Dingleberry almost got his face beat in. But Biff Baxter came in with some cowboy wisdom. He's like, you know, cowboys is only as good as the horse he rides in on, or some shit like that. Like, what does that even mean? In this situation, it meant absolutely nothing, but the security guard is just like, this true. So they talk to the music director. They don't find out much. They find out that he is, of course, upset that Katerina is missing. You know, missing. She could just be, you know, on a binge or something. You know, it could be all sorts of things. Nobody knows where she is. He's upset about that. But he's mostly upset because there's, you know, this gigantic, huge, sold-out performance, big performance tomorrow night, and his main star is not here. You know, that pisses him off. So he's not really concerned. He's more upset. He's also, like, the busiest man in Milan right now. So Biff Baxter coming in saying buongiorno doesn't really, you know, fill him with joy. So they don't find out a great deal. They do find out the location of Katerina's apartment. So they go there, and they talk to the maid there. And, of course, Biff Baxter, you know, swoons her off of her feet. Not really. She's quite distraught. And they find out from her that Katerina is, you know, prone to these kind of sudden emotional actions. As the investigators are well aware from her sudden performance of an aria aboard a train while drunk. And they find out that this performance meant the world to her. And so, you know, it seems strange that she would just go off on some random thing in light of the whole performance tomorrow. So they then go to the police, and in front of the police they see a bunch of protesters who are holding signs reading "Justice for Ennio Spinola." And so they recall a newspaper article that they read earlier that day about a Ennio Spinola who was murdered. And he worked at an automobile factory, the Alfa Romeo factory. And he had been stabbed to death. And so Spinola was an active unionist. And so the whole thing is reportedly to be about union matters between socialists, fascists. That whole thing is going on, all that kind of stuff. And so they don't pay a great amount of attention to that. They note it, but then they go into the police station. And they talk to the guy in charge of the... They talk to the guy in charge of the investigation for Caterina Cavallaro. And again, Biff Baxter is leading all of the conversations here. You need to keep that in mind about the whole thing. that everything going on is basically in Biff Baxter's hands, a dumb cowboy Hollywood film star who speaks Italian. And that's the only reason he's leading everything, is because he speaks Italian. He also has an 85 credit rating, which he didn't really approve with me. If he would have asked, I wouldn't have allowed 85. That's insane. Like, the president maybe has 85 or 90. Biff Baxter's not that huge. Yes, has pictures with the president, sure, but he's not the president. So I wouldn't have allowed 85. I would have allowed 70 maybe, if he really wanted to do it. But it is what it is. I'm not going to change it. So Biff Baxter's leading all these conversations, and everybody he meets pretty much hates him, except for the people that know him as they're fans, which isn't many in Italy yet. And so he tells the detective that they have information. We got information about this case. And so he tells them about the car at the train station, the guy who waved and she got in and blah blah blah. And the detective's like, we know, we know this shit, and we think that the man in the car was known to her, and that the disappearance is genuine. So that wasn't new information, and they didn't really the cops didn't tell them anything that they wasn't already known. Okay, so they go back outside before the detective threatens to beat Biff Baxter with his truncheon. They go back outside, and they see that the group of protesters have been broken up by a group of men in black shirts. And I'll give you a little history lesson. At this time, in Italy, specifically Milan, Benito Mussolini was rising in power because of the whole concept of fascism. And nowadays, if you're not really knowledgeable about any of that, you hear the word fascism, and it's just, that's bad. Fascism sucks. But back in the day, in the 1920s, stuff like that was like an appealing concept to some people, not to everybody. And so you had kind of these issues between socialists and fascists. And so Mussolini had kind of, not a private military force or anything like that, but he had a voluntary militia who was basically sent out to end any socialist talk going around. And so the unions back in that day were all about socialism. It worked for them, goddammit. We don't need this fascism crap. And so the black shirts were all over that shit. And so the main thing that the black shirts did to punish any socialists was they would force feed them castor oil, which is apparently really nasty, and I hope I never have to taste it. They would also do this to, anybody that they didn't really care for. And so I don't know really how thuggish they were. But of course, when you're running an RPG campaign, everything's kind of escalated and embellished and so on. So they're basically just thugs. So, at the time, if you really wanted to role play, if you really wanted to get into your character during this time, which we're not, you could actually see the upside of fascism. You could be on that side and do all sorts of stuff like that. Or you could kind of metagame and just be like, well, we know that's bad. We know it's not going to work out. So, but that's a whole different type of game than what we're really running. So the point of the matter is the black shirts, the immediate issue. And so they're breaking up this little union protest, and Biff Baxter sees this as an opportunity. So he jumps up on a nearby crate and starts hollering at the crowd to go see his new movie coming out in Italy in a few months. And so the black shirts shouted him in Italian. This is all in Italian. Asking if he's looking to cause trouble. So Biff Baxter responds with something. Oh, God. Again, I wish I could just remember everything he said. He's like, if being just a good old country boy is causing trouble, then boy, I'm just a bucket of it. Or something like that. And so they immediately whip out their truncheons for this troublemaker. And Biff Baxter's just like, oh shit. So, and so he basically just walks over to Dingleberry and he's like, a cowboy never runs. He rides. And then he runs away. Like, it was just like, what? So he runs away from the black shirts who immediately chase after him. And Dingleberry and Umberly are just standing there like, well. And, of course, Biff Baxter, the supreme physical specimen that he is, does get away. He outruns the black shirts. And they all meet back up at the hotel. And that's pretty much all they decided to do. Oh, no, not yet. They did something else. I don't think they went straight back to the hotel. They went to, they actually went to, a union association building or something like that. Somebody in charge of the union. And they spoke to a guy there who spoke English. Because, sure. And they were asking about this Ennio Spinola case. And the guy didn't really know much. He didn't know him personally. He didn't know a whole lot of details about the murder. But he's like, you should go check out around the actual murder scene at Portella. Maybe ask around somebody there. Check out, maybe you can get some info there. So they're like, oh, okay. So then they went back to the hotel room. And they all just like, oh, well, let's just settle in for bed. And I'm like, okay. So that night, as they're all preparing for bed, they hear a voice. They hear a voice singing. They hear a voice singing the same aria that they heard performed on the train not so long ago. The voice is of Caterina Cavallaro herself. Unmistakable. And so Umberly pokes his head out the door and he sees all sorts of other people also hearing it and be like, what's going on? And they're starting to go downstairs to check this out. Biff Baxter's like, first Biff Baxter's like, by the way, I sleep completely naked. And I'm like, God damn it. And then, so he hears this and he's like, he says to me, I jump out the window. God, I can't get over it. And so I'm like, what? Because they're on the 3rd floor of this fancy hotel. And he's like, oh shit. Because he thought they were on the train. And so I just had this funniest mental image ever of this guy wearing nothing but a cowboy hat. Diving out of a 3rd-story window. Trying to make a safe landing on the cobblestones below. And then him yelling to go see his new movie coming out in a few months as he falls. Oh, man. So freaking funny. And so I'm just like... And he rolled a 4 on his jump because he put points into jump because he does his own stunts. So he rolled a 4 on his jump. And so they're like, well, maybe you'll be okay. And I was just like, I as much as I would love to have this happen and see it through, I'll rewind time so you don't have to jump out the window. But oh my gosh, it was so funny. So they all eventually go downstairs along with basically all of Milan. And, of course, only the investigators eventually pinpoint where the voice is coming from. Again, thanks to Biff Baxter and his expert listening skills. Like I said, he had the best roles I've ever seen. Of anything. So they eventually pinpoint it coming down from this spooky little side alley. And as they kind of close in, they see a chameleon on the ground. And the aria basically stops. And so Biff Baxter pulls out his whip. Yes, he has a bullwhip, of course. He's a cowboy. And he tries to whip the chameleon. But he fails. He actually failed that one. I was kind of happy with that, but whatever. And the chameleon scurries away. And so again, I'm picturing him. I think he said that he just has a jockstrap on and his cowboy boots. I just love that. He's like, oh shit, shit's going down. I gotta put some clothes on to go outside in January. So he grabs a jockstrap and his cowboy boots. God damn it, Biff Baxter. Why are you the way that you are? Okay, so they all go back to their room. They try to get some sleep, and they hear the aria a few more times that night, but eventually it stops. And that night, they dream of singing lizards. So then in the morning, they have their breakfast, and they read a newspaper article about, the music director at La Scala is upset, but the show must go on with the understudy, so on and so forth. He denies, any supernatural with the ghost voice that people are claiming they hear. And he says, basically it's like all that supernatural stuff is behind us. That's done with. We need to move forward with an excellent performance or something like that. But then it mentions the prop director. Like this was the part that kind of. I'll talk about that in Secrets Role Mangging. But it was just like the prop director's like, after that whole part with the costumery department, we thought the supernatural stuff was behind us, but apparently not so much. Something like that. And so they're like, oh, okay, we don't really trust this music director guy. Why is he denying all this weird shit? It's just like, okay. So then they go to the murder scene of Ennio Spinola. They go to the murder scene. They find where the guy died. They find a blood trail leading to a warehouse. And the warehouse is locked. It's just like a metal door with a little padlock. And they're like, damn, we're stumped. So instead of trying in any way, shape, or form to force open the door, they decide to climb on each other's shoulders and force Dingleberry to go through in a window 15 feet up. Yeah. So they throw Dingleberry up there, who manages to get in the window and over to the other side. And then he realizes it's a 15-foot drop down to the floor. And he's like, is there anything nearby I can maybe jump to? And I'm like, yeah, there's a large crate you can maybe swing your body to. Roll dex. He doesn't roll well. I think he rolls like a 99. So he basically just crashes to the ground, like part of him landing on the edge of the crate, which doesn't help his fall. He basically sprains his leg, and he loses a bunch of health. And so he starts screaming for help. So at this point then, Biff kicks open the door, no problem, because he's Biff Baxter. And he's like, Dingleberry's screaming about his leg, so Biff Baxter's like, let me patch you up. And so he has no points in first aid. Of course he succeeds on his first aid roll, and he basically just rubs dirt on the guy's leg and gives him a shot of whiskey. And I'm like, fine, I have to allow it. Whatever it is, he succeeded on his roll, fine, get some health back. So they go to the center of the warehouse where there's an open space, and there they find a large stone slab with outlines of two bodies, and the outlines of blood for two bodies. Umberley decides to lay down on the slab right where one of the bodies was. I don't know what he was expecting, but that was not... That may bite you in the ass at some point in a Call of Cthulhu campaign. Then they find small reptilian footprints in the blood. And so Biff was really wishing that he had whipped that chameleon. And then on the side of the crates that they find in the warehouse, it says Conti machine parts.
And Biff breaks open one of the crates with his bare hands, and sure enough, it's filled with machine parts. They then recall a newspaper article that mentioned the name Conti as a guy who was one of the patrons of La Scala. And so, this Conti guy is apparently important. Then they go back to the police. Biff Baxter basically gets threatened by multiple cops that he's going to get beaten with truncheons. And he basically just tells them he basically admits to breaking into a warehouse and breaking into private property. And he tells them about, blood on slabs and crazy hooky dooky shit they got going on. God, it's just a wonder to behold. And again, they basically just the final thing that the detective said, he's just like, I should probably just arrest you, but just get out of here. That's all you can say to Biff Baxter. And then they're like, well, I guess, let's just wait until the opera. And I'm just like, wow. I'll talk about that in Seeker's Rollman, but believe you me, they missed a bunch of stuff by saying shit like that. Because it's like I told them, the train leaves tomorrow. Like, the train leaves tomorrow. You need to be on it. They have no idea where Katerina is. And they have no idea where the piece of the simulacrum is that they're supposed to be looking for is. Like, you have accomplished nothing, and you just want to wait for the evening to go to the opera. And their plan at the opera is to just look for anything suspicious. It's just like, what are you guys doing? But anyways, I digress. So they go to the opera. They have front row seat. Like, they have the best seats in the house, basically. Like, it's kind of shocking why Katerina gave them such good shit. But there you go. So they sit down. They all sit down, front row, right in front of the orchestra. And everything's getting primed up, ready to go. And Biff Baxter says he's got to go use the toilet. So he, gets up. He heads, halfway up the aisle. And he comes back and he's like, what was I looking for again? And they're just like, I thought you were going to the toilet. We're just looking for anything suspicious. He's like, oh, got it. And so he actually goes to the bathroom. Well, maybe he doesn't, actually. He, sneaks into the backstage. And I actually didn't do that properly. But he sneaked into the backstage. And yeah, I'm like, oh, roll a stealth. And I'm like, he has no points in stealth. Biff Baxter has no points in stealth. He's just going to get caught, and they're going to yell at him in Italian to go back to his seat, and that'd be the end of it. That cowboy son of a bitch succeeded on his base stealth roll. It's just like, oh my god. And so then when he's just backstage by himself after sneaking past everybody, he sits there and he says to himself, I should think about doing a spy movie. God damn it, Biff Baxter. And so he actually goes back to where that secretary was, to where the music director was, because the music director had a secretary who he was flirting with. So he goes back to that office, and I'm just like, okay, it's locked, and from the sounds of it, it's empty. Because, I don't know, there's an opera going on. Why would the secretary need to be there? And so he's just like, oh shit, what am I doing? I'm like, I have no idea. So the opera commences. And halfway through, maybe not halfway, partway through, the aria is starting to be performed by the understudy on stage. But the Dingleberry and Umberly start to hear another voice performing the aria alongside the understudy, somebody in the audience is singing, and they can again pinpoint the voice as belonging to Caterina Cavallaro. And so I'm like, all right, roll listen to figure out where the voice is coming from. They both fail, of course, because Biff Baxter's not there. So I'm just like, oh, shit. And so the play continues, or not the play, the opera continues. And eventually, so this is the point where Biff Baxter's like, he wants to climb up on like a lighting fixture, like climb up on like some truss or something like that to get up above the stage and get a good vantage point. So I'm like, all right, roll strength. He rolls a 100. And I'm just like, my God, Biff Baxter, Hollywood film star, does his own stunts, fails on climbing this lighting thing. He like rolls a 1, like what? And so I probably should have just had him fall a bunch, take a bunch of damage, make a huge amount of noise. But I was just like, I can't do that to Biff Baxter at all after all this. So he succeeded on his luck roll. So basically he did fall, but he didn't take any damage. But it's going to be a lot harder to attempt again. Of course he attempted again. He rolled a 91. These were literally like the two worst rolls of the entire session for him. And so I was like, you just can't. You can't climb up. You can't do it. I'm sorry. So he's like, shit. So he just kind of hangs out around the stage. So around this point on stage, I won't explain the plot of the opera, even though it gives it for you. Like a mannequin, or a part of a mannequin, is wheeled out on the stage, and it carries basically the main character's armor, like his helmet, his gauntlets, stuff like that, and his chest piece. And the chest piece is being held on the mannequin's torso. And as soon as all the investigators see it, they immediately realize that the torso of the mannequin is the torso piece of the Sedefkar simulacrum. They all just realize it. They see then a old man, 4 burly bodyguards, and an elderly woman immediately like stand up from near the front row, and they head off to the side aisles, and they look like they're about to leave. And the fact that I mentioned this means it's immediately suspicious. So Dingleberry and Umberly both follow them. They go all the way outside, back around to the back entrance, where they apparently convince the burly bodyguard there to let them, or the burly security guard there, to let them in. So the mysterious group enters into the backstage, where Biff Baxter is. Now, if Biff Baxter were with Umberly and Dingleberry, he could have easily just talked to the security guard, who's a fan of his, and they could have gotten back in, and they could have all just followed the guys right to where they needed to go. But Biff Baxter's on his own. And he actually does find where the torso of the mannequin gets wheeled off stage, and he actually does find it on his own. Even though this whole backstage area is just a complete labyrinth. And this was like this was their real problem, was this labyrinth backstage. Labyrinthine. So he finds it, and I'm like, all right, you're gonna need like a hard strength roll to pull the torso off of its its foundation, whatever. And so he's like, okay. He rolls like a 3, and I'm just like, God damn it. So he immediately pulls it off, and he just like lugs it over his shoulder. He's just like carrying this torso of this simulacrum on his back. And again, I'm picturing him this entire time shirtless, even though that's utterly ridiculous. I have to picture it, because that's Biff Baxter. So Umberly and Dingleberry are like, we need to get in there. So Dingleberry's like, okay, one of us should distract him, and the other can just sneak in. And so everybody's just like, well, we know who the distraction's going to be. So Dingleberry rushes over to the guy, and he swings a punch at him. This guy is like, he's like the Mountain from Game of Thrones. Like, he's gigantic. He's bigger than Biff Baxter. And so Dingleberry completely whiffs his punch. And so the guy immediately like sets upon him. And so Dingleberry tries to run away, but he fails his roll. So the guy just pounces on him and beats him to within an inch of his life. And then like Dingleberry spits on the guy, so he beats him to within like a centimeter of his life. But he does prove a good distraction because Umberlee slips in. So then we begin this really frustrating cat and mouse game of chasing through this labyrinthine backstage. And very shortly, Biff Baxter sees this group of mysterious strangers led by this elderly guy. And the elderly guy yells at his goons in Italian, in the voice of Caterina Cavallaro, to, get him, kill him, whatever, to get the torso. So then Biff Baxter's on the run with the torso over his shoulders as he's chased through this maze by these guys. And he's completely lost. He's utterly lost. Umberlee is also just as lost, but he's trying to find something. And eventually Biff, he really screws up a roll. I think he rolls another 100 on his luck roll to navigate. So he walks right into one of the guys' clubs. Boom, 3 damage right to the face. Biff Baxter has 16 health, by the way. I should mention that. So he boom right in the face. So he pulls out his .45 revolver, shoots the guy in the shoulder. The guy is like, ugh. And then he charges at him again with the club. Just as he's about to hit Biff Baxter again, a thick mist descends upon the man. And the guy screams in agony, with Biff not really being able to see what happens. And as the mist fades away, the guy slumps to the ground dead. So Biff Baxter has to roll sanity for that, because that's supernatural. And it's getting pretty late at this point. It's like 11:20 or something like that. So we're past our end time. So we kind of want to move this along. So I have them both roll one more luck. They both succeed. So I'm like, all right, you guys bump into each other right near the stage door to go outside. So I'm like, okay, they're just going to slip out of there. They're going to run to the train. They're going to get out done. That's pretty much what they do. Except that Umberlee lights his dynamite and throws it on the ground in the Galleria backstage. Then they rush out, they patch up Dingleberry, and they run to the train as the Galleria basically, or the La Scala blows up behind them, killing who knows how many people, and destroying the jewel of Italy. And so I should have made Umberlee lose 10 sanity for that. I really should have. But I basically just nullified his sanity bonus that he would have gotten from getting the torso and doing all that. So they run to the train where they meet Giuseppe, their conductor, their friendly neighborhood conductor. And he's just like, have you boys been up to any activity tonight? As he kind of glares at the exploding opera house. And they're just like, we just need, our friend's in trouble. We just need to get on the train and put this all behind us. And he's just like, it's our policy to not ask any questions. So welcome aboard. Now, yeah. So, again, it's just their policy. So they get aboard, and that's basically where we ended. Again, very pulpy, very movie-esque, although I don't know what kind of fucked up movie that would be, but it's movie-esque. It's a movie starring Biff Baxter, that's what it is. So yeah, they wrapped up Milan real nice and tidy, by basically failing to do most of what they could have done. Yes, they got the torso miraculously. They got what they needed. They did the bare minimum in Milan, I guess you could say. And it's been a long journey from Milan to Minsk, so... Biff Baxter, I can't get over that kind of character. I'm so glad that I grabbed that other book and looked through it. It's so good. It's so good. So, if I was really just lame, if I was just a nasty DM, yeah, people in the audience at La Scala could have, recognized their faces, and then they could have tracked down the tickets, and they all had their names on it. It's like, oh, and then they passed that on to the Orient Express because that was apparently in town. They were like, nobody will ever forget Biff Baxter. His name will be all over the place. He'd very quickly be arrested, and that would be the end of that. But why would I want to do that when I can keep Biff Baxter around? That's what I want. So they'll move on. They'll move on from Milan. They have 2 pieces of the simulacrum now. And the next stop is Venice. And I imagine they'll pay a visit to the Dreamlands before they get to Venice. As the session was ending, and I was like, as you guys fall asleep that night on the train, Biff Baxter, you develop a bit of a chest cold. Bum, bum, bum. I'll let him think about that. But yeah, they asked, I think Dingleberry asked how far along they were in the campaign at that point. And I was like, I don't want to spoil it, but I was like, maybe 20%. But I doubt it. Because they visited 3 cities, more or less, on the route. They visited Paris, Lausanne, Milan. Ahead of them, they have Venice, Trieste, Belgrade, Sofia, Constantinople. And I can tell you right now, the campaign doesn't end in Constantinople. So, yeah. There's a long journey ahead of us. But with Biff Baxter and Dingleberry leading the charge, what could possibly go wrong? My name is Mang. This has been Roll Manging for Horror on the Orient Express. I'll see you fine folks next week.